topics discussed in this video may be offensive to some audiences. Nothing was put in this video to target anyone or anything.
Warning, this video may change your mind and might just open your eyes, like if you enjoy.
He discusses his trade expansion and Medicare programs. Asked his opinion of the Supreme Court decision banning prayer in schools, the president says,
"Well, I haven't seen the measures in the Congress, and you'd have to make a determination of what the language was and what the effect it would have on the First Amendment. The Supreme Court has made a judgment. A good many people obviously will disagree with it. Others will agree with it. But I think that it is important for us, if we're going to maintain our constitutional principle, that we support Supreme Court decisions, even when we may not agree with them."
Or about the Navy kowtowing again to the liberals and removing the Bible from all their rooms and all their hotels that they have on base.
And I never thought this was possible, is when school prayer was removed,
yes,
you say that gave them legal access?
Well, that when you look at where, as America was beginning to turn from God, when they started removing, this is what happened with Israel, started removing prayer, early 60s, the word, these are all these things that cast the gods out. So if you remove them, then what's going to happen? You're opening the door for the repossession. You're opening the door. So the house is not going to stay empty. Something else is coming in. If you take this out of school, well, something else is coming into the...
To tonight's Original Now, with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight it's an unexpected but powerful group which says they're fighting to protect the separation of church and state. The Satanic Temple. We told you about them before on this show. Remember, they're battling a lot of conservative movements by fighting for what they say is their members' religious rights. One issue we've seen them gain some traction on is abortion. They've sued states over access to it, even launching what they call the first ever religious abortion clinic network. Now, the Satanic Temple's taking on religion in schools, using new laws in several states to try and get Satanist ministers inside classrooms.
Ser homosexual no es un delito. Es una condición humana.
It's happening in the church today.
Hope.
Just watch.
Lutheran Church, right? We have hope in the church. We have faith in the church. This is the church. And then, bang!
Just watch.
You will
Just wait.
celebrate butt sex and trans and the destruction of children.
In the church.
What's the...
A family can be made up in many different ways.
It's called SOGI, for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identification, a curriculum that teaches public school students across Canada to celebrate the homosexual lifestyle and that gender is fluid. In other words, your gender is not dependent on what parts you were born with, but rather what you feel like in the moment. Lessons include books about transgender children, such as 10,000 Dresses, and songs like The Rainbow Song.
Gender won't decide the choices we make. Some boys like dressing up, some girls like catching snakes.
The SOGI curriculum started in British Columbia in 2016 and is quickly spreading throughout Canada. Simpson disagrees, saying she sees SOGI's real goal as
altering our culture from a heteronormative society into one where anything goes, no boundaries, no values, no morals. It's a hedonistic cult, basically what they're implying.
Another blaring example, drag queen story time. It's happening in Canada and America, where some public schools and libraries invite drag queens, some dressed like horned demons, to read to young children.
And it's a social deconstructionist agenda. They're using children, little 5-year-olds, to accomplish this. And parents are waking up and saying no.
On the ballot. Hope that our children can grow up gay. Hope that black people never get jobs and rely on the government. Hope that transgender men like my wife, Michael, can swing their penis at your daughter in a changing room. Hope is on the ballot.
Extremely nihilistic, pro-death, pit of hell type garbage. That's my view on it.
Meanwhile, the unprecedented amount of drug abuse in Seattle is leading directly to a rise in violent crime. Journalist Jonathan Cho was filming in Seattle on Monday. That's when a homeless man decided to attack him.
What'd you call me?
I told you a chicken. You hide your... Come on.
You know, children in Seattle are exposed to that every single day. You know, in February, Jonathan Cho filmed this scene near a local high school.
$3 piece, $10. Everybody's buying.
At the corner of 12th and Jackson, there's a thriving black market of stolen goods being sold for pennies on the dollar.
$15 piece of crack.
On the other side, addicts use and trade hardcore drugs in plain sight.
You have people using these tents to essentially sell drugs and to traffic people. So
this story coming out of Las Vegas, that elected official, Clark County Public Administrator Robert Tellis, he's charged with murder. He murdered, allegedly, investigative reporter Jeff German, who was writing negative stories about him. But he gets to keep his $130,000 a year salary, his job, while he sits in jail.
Another example of how liberal policies and the double set of standard exist in this country to the detriment of the American people. And in this case, you have an elected official who is still collecting a taxpayer-funded salary and benefit while standing trial for murder. The crime across the country has been skyrocketing. And when people hear stories like this, they continue to lose faith in the system.
Chicago police supervisor ordered the cops to stand down, do not chase the suspects under Chicago's new rules. And since then, Congresswoman, at least 16 more robberies have been reported.
Oregon lawmakers walking back their controversial drug leniency policy, voting to recriminalize certain drugs. This after overdose deaths skyrocketed in the state, with Portland becoming an epicenter of the fentanyl crisis.
America locks up 7 times more people now than we did in 1970. 7 times. We as Americans put more people behind bars than any other nation in the world, both as a percentage of population and in total numbers. More than Russia, China.
DAs who are largely Democratic in those cities and states like New York are also incredible cowards, and they also get hints, etc., from Democratic leadership. Don't do it. We're just doing theatrics here.
97% of all people who are charged criminally wind up entering into plea bargains, and in many cases that's because they can't take the risk of going to trial. And the result of all this is mass incarceration. The United States has by far the greatest number of people in jail and prisons of any country in the world. The second problem with it is that innocent people wind up pleading guilty because they can't take the risk of exposing themselves to the possibility that they might face many, many years in prison. And the final problem is, good as prosecutors may be, if you give people unchecked power, eventually you're going to have abuses. So the classic check on prosecutors, prescribed by the Constitution, was your right to a jury trial. Now they don't even have to remotely think about that possibility in a great many cases because they get an instant plea bargain. So
you wake up in the morning, you check Instagram, you see it shaking her ass, now you horny. And then you swipe and see a car accident. Now how you feel? A baby just got thrown out the window. Then you swipe again, they got his head blown off.
This is crazy.
And then you swipe again, Curry just dropped 60 on that. You swipe again, and then now you see us talking. And then after that, you see some more ass. You don't know how to feel. Your brain is going crazy. It might take a year to go through all those emotions in real time. We're going through it in 2 minutes.
Facts.
You're feeling sad, happy, horny, angry, you're thought-provoking within 30 seconds.
Just how triggering are our phones when it comes to dopamine?
Okay, great question. We often hear that, that social media is getting dopamine hit after dopamine hit. When we first get on social media for the first time or after a long period of time, the amount of dopamine that's released we think is quite substantial. It's novel. Remember, dopamine is about novelty, surprise, and the sense that we are on some exciting track. That's what dopamine is really about. It puts us into states of readiness, anticipation, looking, seeking, etc., almost always for things outside the confines of our skin. Just to contrast it maybe for a bit more of a future discussion, serotonin does the opposite. When there's a lot of serotonin in our brain and body, typically it makes us feel satisfied, sated, and more quiescent, comfortable with what we have in our own immediate sphere and within us, right? The comfort of a good meal, the food you have. Dopamine is about go, go, go. If you look at somebody who's high on cocaine or methamphetamine, it's all about pursuit. because that's a very dopaminergic drug.
Alfred Hitchcock once said of films that creation is based on an exact science of audience reactions. Neuroscientists are looking at how we watch movies to figure out which styles of filmmaking have maximum control over viewers' brains. It's popularly being called neurocinema. In one study, participants watched 30 minutes of The Good, the Bad and the Ugly in an fMRI machine, so their brain activity was being recorded. The researchers compared the pattern of activity in the participants' brains and found it was remarkably similar. During particular scenes of the movie, activity in certain brain areas increased and decreased at the same time across the participants, and their eyes tracked the same areas of the screen.
The brain processes information electrically. It communicates with the cellular structure electrically, and it operates within a certain band of frequency. If you can broadcast frequencies carrying information, this technology has long been known, carrying information and perceptions within the frequency that the brain decodes information, the brain will decode those frequencies and will have those perceptions. You can externally influence people's perceptions externally by broadcasting these frequencies that we interact with because we are antenna.
73, which by the way is only about 50 years ago if you think about it. Ready? The American Psychiatric Association removes homosexuality from its list of mental disorders. That means in 1972 being homosexual was a mental disorder. This ain't 200 years ago, folks. This is just 50 years ago. Okay, so in 2016, 2017, Barack Obama tried to make it more inclusive for transgenders to be able to participate and not get judged. Trump comes up and he revokes it, but then here's what happens the following year in 2018. The White House announces that most transgender people are prohibited in the military, okay? Then in 2020, a letter from the Department of Education announces that the inclusion of transgender athletes in sports teams based on their gender identity is a Title IX violation. This motion effectively bans transgender athletes from participating in sports. So look, why are all these parents? I mean, you see in Glendale what's going on with the protesting. Parents are coming out saying, GUSD, we're sick and tired of Glendale Unified School District. And it's happening across the country. Lesbian rights, Transgender Law Center. And what do these organizations have in common? You ready? They have the same three donors. And do you want to know who's behind these three donors? I wonder who. Do you want to take a wild guess? You probably will get it right. Let me give it to you. First one is Gilead Sciences. In 2001, they became the first company to develop a once-daily pill for the treatment of HIV and AIDS. That's one of the biggest funders. And by the way, do you know who's been a shareholder of theirs since 1999? Soros Fund Management. And in 2015, Soros Fund Management was one of the investors in a group that acquired a majority stake in Themis Medicare, a company that provides specialty pharmacy services to patients with HIV and AIDS. And Gilead Sciences is a major customer of Themis Medicare. The second foundation is called the Arcus Foundation, and George Soros is a trustee of the Arcus Foundation and has donated millions of dollars to this foundation. And the third one, ready? The Gill Foundation, which, who do you think is a trustee? George Soros is a trustee and has donated millions of dollars to the foundation's work. A little weird. Why is this guy behind it? Why are you so concerned about kids and wanting to teach this to them? Like, how's it matter to you, George Soros? Why do you care so much? It's a valid question for parents to ask why he's funding this. By the way, as of June 2023, there are 6 states that make it mandatory to teach LGBTQ-related material in schools. Ready? California, Colorado, Illinois, Nevada, Jersey, and Oregon.
So one of the people that died that was simply shot on the spot by the police, although they were not threatening the police with any weapons. In many countries, the same thing happens that happens in our country. I'd like to stress once more that we sympathize with what happened in the United States, but we have no desire to allow the same thing to happen in our country.
I drive a nice car, I have a nice house, I have money, I have millions. I don't worry about any of that stuff. You know what decision I made last night? I said, what's that? She says, I want a husband. I no longer want to compete with men. Mm-hmm. I need them. And I'm like, what? She's saying this in front of 2,000 people with her sister sitting right next to her. And now she's getting emotional. How many 65-year-old women do we have to hear saying that I marched with the feminist movement and I bought into the fact that men are the enemy? I've never been married. I'm alone and I'm miserable, and I wish I would have never bought into that philosophy.
Black Lives Matter under more scrutiny over how it's spending donors' money. As a new report claims, Black Lives Matter leaders use $6 million in donations to buy a massive, beautiful California mansion.
Yes, Steve, living like the rich and famous. You know, Steve, I'll be very honest with you. $90 million. They basically use black Americans for profit. Steve, ever since the George Floyd death, Black Lives Matter has profited from the George Floyd death. What have they done for the black community? Where are the community centers? Where is the improvement in education? They use this money for personal gain, and you look at that house does not help black Americans. It is basically blood money, Steve, and it's sickening and it's embarrassing. Black people were exploited. Black Americans were exploited by Black Lives Matter for the personal gain of a few.
Dollars. Why?
Oh, why? It is the classic shakedown. Steve, everyone remembers the George Floyd death, a horrific murder.
Yep.
Let's be very clear. Black Lives Matter exploited that. Black Lives Matter, the NBA, all these major corporations, they wanted to be on the so-called right side of justice. They were on the wrong side, because what have Black Lives Matter, what have these social groups done other than exploit, shook down corporations for personal gain, Steve? The black community has not benefited from the $90 million. There's a state investigation into Black Lives Matter in California. That beautiful home does not benefit black Americans. It doesn't benefit Americans at all.
Right.
You are a member of Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And how long have you been a member?
Again, to 2014.
And did you know that Black Lives Matter was an organization that was founded by a bunch of fat black lesbians who hate God, who hate the family, order of the family, who hate the unborn child? And they admitted, at least one of them, that they're a Marxist group and they've been trained to do what they're doing. Did you know it was founded by some fat black lesbians?
So first of all, what we're not going to do is insult folks, right?
Well, they claim to be lesbians and they're fat and they're black.
Well,
I didn't do it.
Well,
Canada is known as one of the most gay-friendly countries in the world, with many of their largest cities featuring their own gay villages, like here in Vancouver, which has literally rolled out the Rainbow Road.
Most gays, like village resident Dave Davy DiCarlo, support SOGI and limiting parental rights.
The change that we have to see is sometimes the parents, and the kids are doing actually really okay.
This is very scary stuff.
Longtime Vancouver area pastor Kevin Kavanaugh says this is far more serious than most Canadian Christians realize.
Our problem is not the teachers, the educators, the administrators. This is a battle in the heavenly. And the little girl came home in tears because the teacher had told her, since she was playing with some toys in the class that were deemed to be masculine in nature, that she was likely a boy in a girl's body. The mother went to the school the very next day, and instead of having any sort of tolerance or support or understanding, she was actually called names. She was told that she was a homophobe, that she was a bigot.
But we're here, we're queer, and we're not going away. We are not some group of people who live in San Francisco or Seattle. We are here. We are your elected officials. We are your brothers. We are your sisters.
To be heard, you deserve to be honored. You deserve to be validated, and that is what this is all about.
Proceeds from this event will go to Planned Parenthood and the Ali Forney Center.
Planned Parenthood for all the work that you are doing for women all across the country, and for families all across the country, and for men who have enough sense to realize you're helping them all across the country.
Is Kavanaugh's powerful legal mind strong enough to withstand the forces of witchcraft? It's a real question now. A coven of self-described witches in New York is planning a rally next week to put a hex on Justice Kavanaugh. You can buy a ticket to attend this hexing ceremony for $10. A quarter of that
goes to Planned Parenthood to help them continue to fund their human sacrifice rituals.
Not the fact we might go into World War fucking III, not on the fact no one can pay their bills, not the fact that there's crack addicts everywhere, not the fact that crime is ridden. No, they don't want to talk about that during their presidential debate. They're going to waste time sitting around talking about whether a fucking idiot woman who's been blessed with a baby by God can kill shot it at 3 weeks, 3 months, or a day before it's fucking born. And they're going to sit around pretending that's important. This is fucking dumb and gay. This is dumb and gay. This is actually a massive head nod and an inclination for you to pay attention to the gynocracy we live under, where the fact that women deciding when they kill their own kids is so important it must be discussed at length. It's not as important as anything else or any of the other issues that are facing the country. No, we need to sit around and talk about this one thing. You know, in other countries where abortion does exist and abortion is legal, it's never celebrated, it's never fucking paraded for, it's never got people wearing t-shirts saying I had an abortion. It's an unfortunate reality that some women have to undertake for personal reasons, fine. But the fact that in America it's now become a fucking hen party, a birthday, it's insane. And the fact that you at home are being forced to digest this bullshit because there is a large contingent of the population you live amongst who are going to decide which candidate is in charge of the nuclear codes based on how late you can assassinate your own fucking kid shows how fucked society is. I don't know why it's even being discussed. Abortion should be allowed probably in extreme circumstances, but you should have a culture where nobody actually wants one, and you can have an economy where everyone can afford to raise a kid so they don't have to struggle with the fact that they might need an abortion or they're going to end up homeless. That's what
He's bleeding right there.
Look at what they want is all of us to be fighting and killing each other. If he was killed tonight, nobody's going to sleep. Everybody's going to be taken to the streets and going crazy. It's going to be left versus right. And I just hope this wakes everybody up. It's them against us. And Tom said democracy. We're a we're a republic. Okay. When you say I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, not the democracy, to the republic. And I hope this wakes everybody up. All these left morons, Obama, Hillary, all that rhetoric.
Believers are always in a state of spiritual warfare. Light against darkness, truth against error, Satan against Christ, the flesh against the spirit. That's it. But there comes a time when it's much more intense. Job experiences by intense troubles that came against him. And Jesus went through a season of temptation, which was a time of spiritual warfare. The thing to know is it doesn't always last. According to Luke chapter number 4 and 13, when the time of temptation was ended, that season was ended, Satan departed and left Jesus. And so you may go through times of severe, intense troubles, and that's a time you know you are in spiritual warfare. Finally, you're not only in warfare when you're acting in defense of the enemy coming against you, but there's a time when the believer goes on the war path, when you decide to go in prayer and fasting for deliverance from your family, deliverance from oppression, diseases. That may be your time of pushing the battle and doing an offensive war against the enemy.
Word was this battle is not yours, Jehoshaphat. This battle is the Lord's.
Lil Nas X's collaboration with art collective Mischief, the 666 pair of sneakers feature gold pentagrams, inverted crosses, as well as human blood inside the sole.
Thank you to Satan for giving me inspiration.
Holy, saw me on the bell. Get the son, give it the gospel. Me like the old me. So
why are you still out here?
Well, it goes back to the destiny thing. I made a bargain with it, a long time ago, and I'm holding up my end.
What was your bargain?
To get where I am now.
Should I ask who you made the bargain with?
with the chief commander.
On this earth?
And this earth, and then in a world we can't see.
People that have been in denial about the left of like, this is not Satanism, or these are not practices of Satanism. This is not when they say the devil is a liar and the devil works to alter our perceptions of what is lie, what is the truth.
And the devil,
for a long, long time has had these screens for his playground.
At last night's Grammys, they, as Smith now prefers to be called, identified as Satan.
Katy Perry performs Dark Horse at the Grammy.
By demons. In almost every major city, there are symbols for Lucifer. The headquarters of the United Nations is located at 666 United Nations Plaza, where there is plenty of demonic symbolism, such as this end-time beast. In the Bible, it is said that 200 fallen angels descended on Mount Hermon, and that the UN, coincidentally, has a base there. The craziest thing is that there is a huge pyramid in a city called Astana, which has been intentionally hidden from us, similar to the one on the money that controls our entire world. And in this pyramid, there are 200 perfectly aligned chairs. It's almost as if the 200 fallen angels have a secret base where they hatch their plans. In the same city, there's another torch representing Lucifer. This evil symbolism even extends to CERN, the state research facility, where there is a statue of Shiva, the destroyer of worlds. It's all just a theory, but the evidence is very convincing.
Go back in the ancient world and you find that the Phoenicians and the Babylonians and the people of that area at that time, they used to sacrifice children to a deity called Moloch or Molech. In the Old Testament even, you can see references to people being condemned for putting their children through the fire to Molech. When I've talked, and I've done so much research into the Satanism network, not least because to understand that staggeringly is to understand how the world's controlled and who's doing it. And I've talked to victims of this stuff, most of which don't survive, of course, but the few that have, comparatively. And I've talked to therapists around the world, particularly a great friend of mine in London, Vera Diamond. And they tell me that today, these elite names are still doing ritual sacrifices of children to a deity called Moloch or Molech, the same as they were thousands of years ago.
And we need to be aware that our battle is not against flesh and blood, as we see in Ephesians chapter 6. But there is an unseen world, and there is a spiritual battle taking place. And I would encourage you to read Ephesians 6, where Paul talks about putting on the armor of God, whereby you could be spiritually protected. So we need to realize when we look at the scriptures that there is the Satan who is after you. There is the adversary, the evil one, the devil, who wants to render you powerless and defeated as a believer. And we also can be encouraged by remembering, as 1 John 4:4 says, he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. But remember that the enemy is like a roaring lion. He roams around seeking whom he may devour. So let's remember James 4:7. Submit to God then, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Subscribe